My name is Calvin Marsh. I'm 58 years old, and for 37 years I ran a precision lathe at Steelman Manufacturing outside of Rockford, Illinois. On a Tuesday morning in March, I came back from a hardware run and found two boxes on my front porch. My handwriting was on both of them. The labels I'd addressed to my grandchildren, crossed out, hard, the way you cross out a mistake you're angry at. I sat down on the step. The bags from the hardware store were still in my hands. I already knew what was in the boxes because I'd packed them myself the week before. My granddaughter's box had a set of precision drafting instruments I'd machined in my home shop over the winter. Compasses, dividers, a ruling pen. I'd turned the handles from brass rod and engraved her initials on each one, EAM. She'd told me at Thanksgiving 2 years ago that she wanted to study civil engineering. I figured she'd need tools worth keeping. My grandson's box had a brass eyepiece I'd made for his telescope. I'd spent 3 weekends getting the threading right. His was harder than hers. He would have known the difference if I'd rushed it. Return to sender was stamped on both in red ink. Somebody had put them back in the mail themselves. You don't get that label from the post office unless you hand the package back over the counter. I carried both boxes into the garage, set them on the workbench, didn't open them. My son had called 11 days before that. I'd been out in the garage when the phone rang in the kitchen. I almost didn't answer. He said, "Dad, I think the kids need some space from the family stuff right now." There was a pause. The kind of pause that means someone else is in the room. They're at an age where it gets complicated. You know? I didn't know, but I said, "All right." He said, "It's not personal." I said, "All right" again. Then I went back to the garage. I want to be clear about something. I didn't argue. I didn't ask him what he meant by complicated. I didn't ask who had decided. I picked up the piece I'd been working on and I kept going. I've spent 37 years making things that have to be right down to the thousandth of an inch. You don't get there by stopping every time something throws you. But I'm going to be honest with you, the way I haven't always been honest with myself. I didn't argue because a part of me believed him. A part of me thought, maybe that's true. Maybe you are too far away. Maybe they don't know you well enough anymore. And that part of me was wrong. But it had a lot of years of practice. My wife Dorothy died in January 7 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. She went in 11 weeks from diagnosis to gone. I still can't say it went fast because it didn't feel fast. But looking back, it was. 3 weeks after the funeral, my sister Vera came to the house. She sat at the kitchen table with a folder and a calculator, and the kind of expression she gets when she's about to tell you something you need to hear and won't like. Vera's a CPA, has been for 30 years. She does taxes for half the county, and the other half wishes she did theirs. She said, "Dorothy told me to come." I said, "What are you talking about?" She opened the folder. She made me promise. Before she went, she said, "Vera, go to Calvin after. Don't wait more than a month. Take the UTMA forms." I looked at the papers on the table. 3 sets, 1 for each grandchild. "What's a UTMA?" I said. "Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. It's a custodial account. You put money in, it belongs to the kids, but you control it as the custodian until they turn 21. Illinois law." She moved her finger down the page. "You sign here as custodian, your name, nobody else's. The money you put in is theirs, but you hold the door until they're old enough to hold it themselves." I asked her what happened if I didn't sign. She looked at me over her glasses. "Then the money just sits in your regular account and anybody can get to it." She tapped the page. "This protects it, Calvin. Sign." I signed all 3. My hand was steady. It's always steady. 37 years of precision work. Your hands don't shake. Then I put the paperwork in the file cabinet in the spare bedroom, and I went on with things. Every year I put money into each account. Every year in January, I mailed my son an account statement. Clean printout, a note clipped to the front in my own handwriting. Balance as of December 31st. "Call me if you have questions." That was it. That's all it said. He never called. I told myself that was fine. In my experience, no news is good news. A machine that isn't making noise is running right. I made the same mistake with my family that I'd made for 30 years. I assumed silence meant everything was okay. I was wrong about that long before I understood it. The packages sat on my workbench for a week. Then I went through the mail I'd been letting pile up on the kitchen counter. Bills, a seed catalog, a property tax notice, and near the bottom, a padded envelope with a postmark from 6 weeks before my son's call. I remembered opening it when it arrived. I'd glanced at it, seen a stack of forms with colored flag tabs on the signature lines, and set it down. Dorothy had made me promise in 2014, after I signed a roofing contract I shouldn't have, that I would never put my name on paperwork without Vera sitting next to me, so I just set it aside and forgot about it. Now I sat down and read it. The top page had a yellow sticky note, my daughter-in-law's handwriting, big, round letters, the kind that look cheerful whether they mean to or not. Just some account paperwork, Dad. Sign where the tabs are. Thanks so much. 3 exclamation points. I peeled off the note. The header on the form underneath read, Illinois Zutma, designation of successor custodian transfer form. Every tab, pink, 3 of them, was stuck to a line that said accepting custodian on the right side. Her name was already typed in. All 3 pages. She'd filled in her own name before she mailed it. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog was barking at something. I called Vera that night. She came the next morning before 8. She didn't take her coat off. She put her laptop on the table and turned it toward me. Listen, she said. The custodian has full discretionary control. Investments, withdrawals, everything. Within the rule that it's supposed to benefit the minor, but supposed to runs on the honor system, Calvin. There's no automatic enforcement. If someone wanted to drain those accounts and fight it out in court later, they could. By the time the kids had standing to sue, the money'd be gone. I looked at the pink tabs. If you sign that, she said, you resign as custodian, and she steps in immediately. All 3 accounts. She turned the laptop around. She pulled up the county recorder's database. A few clicks. My daughter-in-law had opened a boutique gift shop in downtown Rockford 14 months ago. She'd financed it with a second mortgage on the house. Pulled $78,000 against equity my son had spent 9 years building. A vendor lien had been filed against the shop in November. The shop had started closing on Wednesdays to cut overhead. I did the arithmetic on the back of the tax notice because that's what my head does with numbers. 14 months in the red. A lien already filed. A mortgage payment that had gone up $640 a month. So they don't need me gone, I said. Vera shook her head. She said it flat, no drama, and that's what made it land. They don't need you gone, Calvin. They need you off that signature line. Those are 2 very different things, and only one of them required them to be unkind to you. I looked at the sticky note still lying on the table. My son's call had come exactly 6 weeks after she'd mailed those forms. I told Vera I wasn't signing. She asked if I was doing it to punish them. I said no. I said Dorothy told me to hold that door, and I wasn't going to stop because somebody put 3 exclamation points on a sticky note. Then I drove to Gus Tillman's place. Gus and I worked the same floor at Steelman for 22 years. He retired 6 years before I did. He's 71 now, and still gets up at 5, because he doesn't know how to do anything else. He's got a heavy safe bolted to the floor in his back room that he uses for documents, which tells you something about his priorities. I asked him if he still had what Dorothy had sent him. He said, "Been waiting for you to come for this." He opened the safe and handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photocopies of all 3 original UTMA applications from 7 years ago. My signature on every one, and on the witness line, Dorothy's handwriting. There was something else in the envelope, a single index card folded once. Her handwriting. Calvin, Heather asked me about the kids' accounts twice in the hospital. Once in September, once in October. I didn't tell you because you would have gone quiet and blamed yourself, and that's what you do. Don't sign the transfer. You hold the door. Don't let them take it away from those kids. They'll need it. D. I sat down on an overturned milk crate in Gus's back room. He went out to the kitchen without a word and came back with 2 mugs of coffee, set one near my boot, and walked off to sweep a floor that didn't need sweeping. Good man. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, my granddaughter Emma had texted me from a number I didn't recognize. "Grandpa, it's me. This is my friend's phone. Did you send me anything recently? Mom said you stopped sending things years ago." I looked at that message a long time, then I typed, "Yes, a set of drafting instruments. You didn't get them." She typed back, "No, can I ask you something?" I said yes. She said, "How come you never reach out anymore? Mom says you checked out after Grandma died." I went to the garage and took a photo of the 2 boxes sitting on my workbench, the return to sender stamps facing up, her name crossed out in black marker, I sent it without typing a single word with it. Not one. The dots came up, went away, came up again. That happened 3 times. Then, Grandpa. Then, there's a storage unit on Elm. We've had it since we moved. She went there that afternoon. She sent me 9 photographs. 7 years of gifts, stacked in the back corner of a 10 by 10 unit under a blue plastic tarp. The drafting compasses in their case, never opened. The telescope eyepiece still in the bubble mailer. A hand-carved recipe box I'd made 2 Christmases ago. She'd mentioned once she wanted to learn to cook. A remote control plane kit I'd assembled and painted for my grandson. A set of hand-stamped leather bookmarks for my youngest granddaughter. Her name in letters I'd cut from a steel stamp I made myself. 3 years of birthday presents with the tag still tied. In the last photograph, a strip of masking tape on the edge of the tarp. 2 words in my daughter-in-law's handwriting. Deal W later. I put both hands flat on the workbench and stood there. Emma texted again. Grandpa, I've been using the school's compass set for 2 years. I thought we just couldn't afford good ones. Then, why didn't you ever say anything? I typed slow. Because I thought a gift you have to explain stops being a gift. Then I typed one more line. I was wrong about that. She didn't answer right away. When she did, it changed everything I had planned. Grandpa, I have the Regional Engineering Award ceremony at school on Saturday. I want you to come. Emma's school held the ceremony in the gymnasium. I got there 35 minutes early. Sat in the last row on the left side, on the aisle. That's where I've always sat when I can't be sure I'm welcome. You can see everything and you're not in anybody's way. My son and my daughter-in-law came in and took seats 6 rows ahead. She had a scarf on. She scanned the room the way people do when they're looking for something specific. She found me. She went completely still for about 2 seconds. Then she faced forward and put her hand on my son's arm. They read the names alphabetically. When they called my granddaughter's name for first place in the structural engineering category, she walked to the front, shook the principal's hand, took her certificate. Then she stopped at the edge of the stage. She put her hand up over her eyes against the gymnasium lights. She looked out at the back row. She found me. She held that certificate out toward me with both hands. I nodded once. I didn't stand up, I just nodded, and I said quiet to nobody but myself, "Good work, kid." Afterward, she came straight through the crowd in her good dress and stopped in front of me. She said it loud enough for the people around her to hear clearly. "Grandpa, come to the house for dinner. I'm inviting you." My daughter-in-law got there in 10 seconds. "Emma, that's not." My granddaughter turned around, 17 years old. She didn't raise her voice 1 degree. "It's my award, Mom. It's my dinner." And right then the school's college and financial aid counselor walked up, a woman named Mrs. Okafor, who'd been working with Emma on scholarship applications. She had a folder under her arm, and the look of someone doing a job she didn't know had become complicated. She looked between all of us and said, "Emma, I'm sorry to do this today, but I need the custodian's signature on your UTMA verification for the scholarship file before end of month." She looked at my daughter-in-law first. "I can sign that," my daughter-in-law said. She reached for the folder. Mrs. Okafor pulled it back. She looked at the form. She looked up. Her face changed, not angry, just puzzled. The way you get when the paperwork doesn't match the room. "Ma'am, I need the account custodian. The name on file is..." She looked out across the gymnasium. She said it clearly, the way you'd call out for a lost set of keys. "Is there a Calvin Marsh here? I need the account custodian." I raised my hand from the back row. I walked through the middle of that gymnasium. People moved without quite moving the way they do. Mrs. Okafor looked at me, looked at the form, looked at me again. She said, "Mr. Marsh, I need to read the balances from all 3 accounts for the scholarship committee's verification. Is that all right?" I said, "Go ahead." She read from the folder. Account 1, beneficiary Emma Ann Marsh, custodian Calvin D. Marsh. Current balance $71,400. Somebody stopped talking mid-sentence nearby. Account 2, beneficiary Caleb Thomas Marsh, custodian Calvin D. Marsh. Balance $39,600. Account 3, beneficiary Sophie Grace Marsh, custodian Calvin D. Marsh. Balance $26,800. The gymnasium was quiet enough that I could hear the ventilation system running in the ceiling. My granddaughter turned to her mother. Her voice was very small. "You said there was no money for college." My daughter-in-law didn't answer. I set the metal lockbox on the table beside the scholarship forms. I'd made it years ago from steel plate, welded corners, a hinged lid, Emma's name stamped on the front in letters I cut before she was born. When I was still learning to do lettering, I opened the lid. Inside were 7 envelopes, still sealed. Postmarks running 2018 through 2024. Everyone addressed to my son. Everyone containing the annual statement I'd mailed him. Everyone with my note clipped to the front. Balance as of December 31st. Call me if you have questions. I said it plain. Vera picked these up last week from the desk in your home office. 7 years of statements, not one of them opened. I looked at my son. He looked at the envelopes. He looked at me. He said it the way he'd been saying it his whole life when things got hard between us. You never came to my baseball games. Nobody in that gymnasium made a sound. I took my notebook out of my jacket. I've kept a work notebook since I was 26. Measurements, tolerances, job notes, anything I needed to remember. I opened it to a section in the middle and turned it around and held it out to him. 43 lines, every game I'd gone to, his age, the score, what I remembered. June 9, 1997, game at Wilson Field. He hit a double in the 4th. I was standing by the right field fence. September 14, 1999, he didn't play. Sat the bench the whole game and didn't complain in the car. I wrote that down because I was proud of him for that. He took the notebook in both hands. They weren't steady. I said, I stood behind the fence at every game I could get to. You always looked for me in the bleachers. I didn't want you embarrassed in front of your friends because I still had shop grease on my boots. He stared down at the page. He put 2 fingers right on the line about the fence. He said, barely above a whisper, you were there. I was always there, I said. I just didn't know I had to say it out loud. My son sat down on the edge of the stage steps, 39 years old, in front of 50 people at his daughter's awards ceremony, and he put his face in his hands. And standing there in the middle of that gymnasium, I understood what I had done to him. I taught him that love is something you prove through what you build, not what you say. And he spent his whole life waiting for me to say it. The following week, I went to Vera's office. Emma's account transferred directly to her. She was turning 18 in April. My grandson and youngest granddaughter's accounts went into a trust, Vera as trustee, funds payable directly to an accredited school, not through anyone else's account on the way. I didn't take out a single dollar. It was never mine. My daughter-in-law called 2 months later. The cheerfulness was gone from her voice. She said the shop was closing. She said they were going to lose the house. She said, 20,000 wouldn't even be noticed in those accounts, Dad. I said, that money isn't mine to give. It belongs to the kids. She said, you're punishing us. I said, the shop was 14 months in the red before I ever opened a drawer. I didn't do that. She started to say something, stopped. Then I said the thing I hadn't planned on. If you and my son need a place to stay while you figure things out, I've got the apartment above the garage. It needs a new floor and some electrical work. I'm a machinist. I can fix it. A long silence. That's not what I called for, she said. I know, I said, but the door's open. She didn't take it. My son came alone 3 weeks later. He drove out on a Sunday morning and sat in his car in my driveway for 40 minutes. I eventually walked out, unlocked the side door of the garage, left it standing open, and went back inside without saying anything. He came in eventually. He stood at the workbench and ran his hand along the steel surface, the way you do when you're buying yourself time to speak. He said, what are you working on? I said, a box for your youngest. She turns 11 next month. He watched me work. Then he said, I need to tell you something. All right. I saw your car in the school parking lot before the ceremony. He kept his eyes on the bench. I saw you walk in. I didn't. He was quiet a moment. That's the only thing I got right in a long time, and I know it. I kept working. He said, Dad, I didn't open those envelopes because I was ashamed. Every year you sent that statement, and I thought, he's been doing this the whole time, and I never once called him back. The longer I didn't say it, the heavier it got, until it seemed easier to just. He stopped. That's not an excuse. No, I said, it's not. He nodded slowly. He looked at the box I was cutting. Can I help? I handed him a file, showed him the angle. He did it wrong the first time, and I corrected him. Did it wrong again. I corrected him again. Third time, he got it close enough to keep. He's been coming Saturday mornings since February. He's slow and he second guesses every measurement, and he's ruined more stock than I want to think about. But he keeps showing up, and every Saturday morning, I say something out loud that I should have said 30 years earlier. My granddaughter is at the University of Illinois now, studying engineering. She took the drafting compasses with her. I watched her unpack them the day we moved her in. She went quiet when she saw the initials engraved on each handle. Then she held one up to the window to check the threading. She's got good eyes. My grandson flips his telescope eyepiece over and shows the engraving to anyone who'll look. I've told him to stop. He doesn't stop. My youngest granddaughter calls me Grandpa now. She called me Dad's dad for the first 2 months, which is technically accurate, and I never corrected her. She corrected herself eventually. It took her about 3 months to switch over, and not once did I say a word about it. There's a photograph on the wall above my workbench. My granddaughter at the awards ceremony, holding her certificate out with both hands toward the back row of the gymnasium, toward me. I got my notebook out last Saturday and wrote the day's line. February 22nd, Scott in the shop, Sophie's birthday box. He got the corner angle right on the third pass, didn't quit. I put the rubber band back around it and set it on the shelf. People ask me whether I forgive my son. Here's what I tell them. Forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a decision you make every morning when you leave the garage door unlocked and don't say anything about it. He walks through. That's all it needs to be. I still measure twice before I cut. I always will. But now when I hand someone something I made, I say it out loud. I say I made this for you. So there's no question, so they know. My youngest granddaughter climbed up on the shop stool last Saturday and watched me work for an hour without making a sound. Then she said, "Grandpa, what do you do when you measure wrong?" I said, "You cut again." She thought about that. What if you run out of material? Then I said, "You go get more, you start over." She nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something she'd already suspected was true. That's the whole story. The rest of it is Saturday mornings and open doors, and saying out loud the things I spent 30 years assuming people could read off my hands. I'm still learning. At 58, I'm still learning that.